This is the Pretty Deadly Self-Defense Podcast. I'm Susie Kahlich, the founder of Pretty Deadly Self-Defense.
And I'm Kate Lismer, a writer, traveler, mother, and expat. As a woman who lives in a big city and likes to travel, I'm very curious about self-defense. I've never had any training, so I have a lot of questions.
And I have a lot of answers.
We figured you probably have similar questions too, and so we thought it'd be a great idea to share this conversation and put it in a podcast.
So, welcome to the Pretty Deadly Self-Defense Podcast.
I think one situation where a lot of women or men become uncomfortable is hearing about these attacks that can happen when people are out on a morning run, and whether it's, when they're out by themselves. And I wonder if you could talk about why people running are this target, but also, is there anything we can do when running and when trying to get exercise outside to not be a target?
I really hate the idea of people feeling like it's their responsibility to not be a target, because it's really other people's responsibility to not attack you. I think people should, we live in a world that is as it is. And there are dangers, et cetera, and we don't necessarily want to put ourselves in the way of danger, but running in the morning or at night isn't supposed to be putting ourselves in the way of danger. Why are people more vulnerable when they're running? Because you're alone. Because people do tend to run before or after work, in the early morning hours or in the evening hours when it's dark and there are shadows that can be used to somebody's advantage. So, yeah, you can be a bit more vulnerable when you run. And yeah, because it is alone, and often because people wear headphones as well. They're very focused on the path that they're running or hitting a certain amount of kilometers or whatever it is, and not as aware of what's going on around them. Your body is also in motion. Mm-hmm. It can be harder, I think, in those moments to tap into your intuition, right? Kind of. Yes and no, because it's not really entirely true, but I think that's what we can feel. So, yeah, it's a bit of an obvious target in a way, I guess. I hate to say that because I don't want to speak on the behalf of attackers, because I frankly don't know what they're thinking.
Right.
But nonetheless, just from a logistical position, sure, I can see it. What can we do to be more aware when we're running or reduce chances of being hurt when we don't have the option to run with a partner, or we don't have the option to run in the middle of the day in broad daylight, which most people don't have the option to do? I think it's to look for anomalies, to try not to allow yourself to get very tunnel visioned. And I know when I was training for a marathon years ago, or now I run in the gym, and when I'm running in the gym, it's totally fine because you're safe. But, you get into a kind of zone. Mm. And that's, in a way, that's partly why you run, to get into that zone. It can be very meditative, and that can be really nice. However, we don't want to shut down the world or outside of that zone, but we do want to tell ourselves to remain aware of anomalies. Because even if you're kind of tunnel vision, you can see little movement on the edge of the tunnels that wouldn't necessarily belong there. Mm-hmm. And when we do see that movement, to pay attention, to not just brush it off. We have a tendency a lot, I think, in any stage of our life, to brush things off. Oh, that was weird. Oh, whatever. Mm-hmm. I was overreacting. Oh, what a strange thing. Huh. Whatever.
Ever since we talked about that the first time, I've just noticed myself becoming so much more aware. Especially, it just at the train station feels like the most prominent place. And it just happened to me yesterday where I'm like, God, this guy is just being a little weird. Or I heard yelling a little bit down the platform, and it's like, some part of me, I used to think, "Ooh, I wonder what's going on. I'm going to go look over there," And now I really avoid it. 'Cause I'm like, I don't need to bring that, why bring that into my area? I don't need that extra threat, which I don't know, maybe when I was younger, I didn't care. I didn't see, but now I'm like, I just feel like there's no need, to bring that in and to pay attention when something comes up like that.
Yeah. And I think it's absolutely doable when we're running as well, or doing any kind of exercise. It's listening to that deep voice of intuition. Now, the difference between intuition and paranoia is questions and comfort. Intuition is very fast. It comes and goes, like you just know, and then it's gone, the sensation. It doesn't stay with you. You don't ask a lot of questions about it, and it's usually a sort of calm thing, whereas paranoia is a lot of questions and a lot of chaos and confusion. And should I go or should I stay? I don't know what's going on here. Those two things can help us determine whether a threat is real or not. I don't think it's terribly wrong to act on paranoia when we're feeling it, as long as we don't set off a wave of paranoia all around us. If it makes you feel safe to get out of a situation, then go ahead and get out. Why not? Just don't set everybody else on fire when you do that. But so when we're running or when we're exercising or walking, and here in Berlin, the parks are open all night, but they're not lit, which is weird. Like these dark parks that people walk in, which can be dangerous, but it can also be safe. You never know, really.
Right.
Do we need to put ourselves in this situation to test it out? Probably not.
You're going to hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you think? Because yes, people shouldn't have to feel like they're a target just because they're going out and doing like a very normal activity. But what can people do? What can people do either to, you were talking about intuition and kind of sensing anomalies and maybe being in a more protective stance if you're going to go out become more vulnerable. But what about actual defense moves? Because I'm thinking you could possibly use this movement to your advantage, right?
Sure. I think one of the first things to do, if you're somebody who runs on a regular route, you already know the route, but look again at that route, maybe walk it instead of run it, and find out where your escapes are. Because we kind of just, you run and you run back, or you run in a circle, whatever your route is, and you sort of just know the main path. You've been absorbing all kinds of information as you go along about, this store stays open late, this, there's an alley down here, whatever it is, but go walk it consciously. Be aware of where those things are, because you can use those to your advantage. I think people who tend to target runners are also familiar with a runner's path, in the sense of at 5 p.m. every day, this person passes by, right? But they may not know the entire path. You always know your landscape best. So know it best, walk it, and check out the different places you can go for safety, whether it's down an alley that might be unexpected or into a store or whatever it is. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is, and this is a question that comes up in general, should I show fear? Don't show fear. If you sense that there's some danger around, a lot of people have the tendency to be like, well, I'm, and I did this too. A lot of people have the tendency to be like, well, I'm not going to show that I'm afraid, because that's what they want. They already know you're not that good of an actor. You're not going to cover it up. So if your sense is to run faster, run faster. Here's where this is to your advantage. You're a runner. They're not. You're going to outrun them, I'll bet. You've got the lung power. You've got the leg power. Go for it. Just zoom. Use it. And not only that, if you're still on the same route, you're still getting your run in.
I love this episode. It's like, what do you tell a runner? Just run. Run. Yeah. Run faster.
But if somebody comes up behind you and grabs you, they're going to start pulling you. They may stop you or start pulling you back, right? They're going to stop you from the direction that you're going in, whether by standing directly in front of you or grabbing you from behind. The general rule in martial arts as well as in self-defense is if they pull, you push. If they push, you pull. So if somebody grabs you from behind and they're pulling you back, then go with it. Make sure that your elbows are sort of cocked and at the ready so that they get an elbow jab. Don't resist, because then that turns into a struggle. That doesn't mean let them like drag you off into the woods, but it means the initial pull, go with it, because you can use that momentum to your advantage to just create a giant body slam that they're not expecting. They're expecting you to resist, and the same, if they stand in front of you, they're expecting you to try and move to either side, or maybe to stop, or maybe to try and reason with them. Take a right turn, or just do a 180 and run in the opposite direction fast, but if they grab you and they pull, then go with it. Use their momentum and your body weight that's already in motion and push. You know what you're doing. If you have time to learn how to roll as opposed to just splat fall, that's great, because you can turn. If you're a runner, you're already really good at recovering your balance when you're running. So if you learn how to roll, if somebody pulls you, you can turn that into a roll and keep going, because they're expecting you to lose balance and fall flat on your face.
That's great. That's a really good tip. Pretty Deadly Self-Defense is a self-defense program developed by 20-year martial arts veteran and violent crime survivor Susie Kahlich. Based in Berlin, Germany, you can also find Pretty Deadly in a growing number of cities around the world through the Pretty Deadly website or the Pretty Deadly app. Learn more about Susie and the Pretty Deadly community at prettydeadlyselfdefense.com.